Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app on Apple Podcasts, and on Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. We do recommend that you download Spotify either way, or at least download the podcast off of there, stream it from there, because that works on both platforms. And lately, it's been getting there a little bit quicker. Also, check out Off the Floor. That's our Discord server, $2.99 per month. I actually got the idea for this episode from the Discord server. So yes, we are watching, we are listening, we are contributing, we are conversating, whatever they call it. This is the place for the most heat. Check it out. It's Off the Floor. Link right here in the description. You'll bypass the $1 Apple upcharge, pay $2.99 a month. And the great thing is, if you don't like us, you can cancel at any time. Also, check out Prize Picks. That's our official fantasy sponsor. Use the code 5 FIVE. Put down your $5. You get $50 to play right away. Prize Picks allows you to play in the state of Florida. Yes, legal again. We know that some of you use another one, but there are others that are not legal. This one is legal in the state of Florida, and they pretty much got all the features back that they used to have. So check it out. It's prizepicks.com. Use the code FIVE. And now, today's episode.
Mercy, luxurious, Heat Nation, yeah, Mercy and Lago, down in Biscayne, yeah, five on the floor, ride for my dogs, where here's the thing, you can check the score, hustle hard, couple scars, wearing bubble frogs, down in Biscayne. Kept the flow playing, got it all banned. Y'all seen the block, stop with one hand. And Pat we trust, Inspire have the guts. We're here to bring the heat, y'all can hang it up.
Welcome to Five on the Floor, a daily insider show on the Miami Heat and the NBA, featuring Ethan Skolnick, Greg Sylvander, Alex Toledo, Brady Hawk, and others from the Five Reasons Sports Network. Also, make sure to subscribe to Off the Floor for the most heat anywhere.
All right, welcome back to Five on the Floor. Here's today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and at Five Reasons Sports. I got Brady Hawk. You can follow him at Brady Hawk 305. The Miami Heat, of course, been out of the playoffs for a while. We're now set for the Final Four: Indiana, New York, Minnesota, OKC. None of the top seeds other than OKC. Minnesota was a team that came on later in the season after adjusting to the Towns for DiVincenzo and Randall trade. In the East, of course, Boston, the Tatum injury. Cleveland just had some injuries at the beginning of the series and just never got themselves back into it. But in the Heat's case, it's what are they going to do this offseason? And one of the things that they need to figure out is what to do with Terry Rozier. And can I reveal what you said when I suggested this topic? Am I allowed to say?
You can say whatever.
Okay. I said, because I'm thinking about this, because I'm old and I've covered the Heat since 1996, and I cannot think of another player that fell off so much and then rebounded. Like I am struggling with this. Okay. There are certain guys who've had off years. Okay. There are players that maybe didn't shoot the ball quite as well. There were a couple of those during the Big Three era. There was injury related stuff. Obviously, Dwayne fell off when he got hurt. But I really am having a hard time coming up with a player who just sunk, just forgot how to play basketball, essentially, and then all of a sudden could. And I know that, and I put this on Off the Floor, and I haven't gotten an answer yet from anybody who can think of anything, although most of our friends on there are about Brady's age or younger. But I can't think of one. I don't know if Greg can think of one. He's kind of old like me. I don't know that most Heat fans will, but if you can think of one, send it to me because I'm struggling with it a little bit. Again, there have been guys who took some time to adjust. Luol Deng was much better his second year in a different role than he was his first year. There are other guys who just improved dramatically in certain areas. Chris Bosh even was not a great defender when he came to Miami. He became an elite pick and roll defender by that time. But that's not really what I'm talking about. I'm talking about a guy who was sought after to a certain degree. I mean, the Heat were not the only team who would have had interest in Terry Rozier. And not only did they give up a first-round pick, which is regrettable, but they also gave up Kyle Lowry's expiring contract, which if that had been allowed to expire, not that we were proponents of that, most of us in the network, we were not, but if they had allowed that to expire, they would have been in a different position financially as well. Brady, I guess before we get into whether or not he can rebound for this and whether the Heat can recoup any kind of value either on the court or in a trade, and he's an expiring contract, he didn't earn those extra incentives because he didn't make the second round of the playoffs, didn't play 70 games, but still roughly $24 million, which is a pretty decent chunk even these days. Do you have any explanation for what happened here? I mean, without being a doctor and the neck injury, would you have any explanation? Because the guy, he was like certifiably awful last year. He was not certifiably awful after the Heat acquired him.
Yeah, I mean, we could get into the specifics of like the neck injury. We can get into the specifics of Spo kind of orchestrating the offense around cutting out mid ranges, which is something he has done for so long, where he just takes tough shots, where he takes those step back deep mid ranges, and Spo wanted to turn those into threes. And all of that. But I just don't know if you can really point at any of those things. I think it was just a lot of factors into one, where he just wasn't playing good basketball. Look, like we could talk about specific parts of the court. The thing that stuck out more than anything is like you didn't want to see him go for a layup. Like the finishing around the rim was just kind of got to a point where it was rough. It was rough to watch. And it's you talked about like players that played well, fell off, and bounced back. I mean, the thing that sticks out to me when you say that is it's happened a lot when the player gets moved from one team to the next, where maybe he can bounce back if he gets to another team. And I feel like from Terry Rozier's perspective, because we keep bringing it from Miami's perspective and saying, okay, like this just doesn't work. They have to move on, whatever. But from Terry Rozier's perspective, I mean, I think it makes most sense for him as well to get away from this team. I think he needs a new opportunity. We've seen it. Look, even let's say Davion, who was a guy that found a great, situation for himself, and he played really well with Miami this season. He's had down moments in the past as well in these past teams, whether it was Sacramento or Toronto. Maybe not to the degree of what we saw this year, especially with the role that he had, the expectations that Terry had. But I just feel like the biggest thing is like maybe he can have a bounce back if he gets put in the right position on probably, let's be honest, a bad team where he could kind of be in a position to put up a bunch of shots and do that. And he can get back to being a 16 point per game scorer. I think that's what he was when he was the first year in Miami. Maybe that's the case. But as you said, I just don't think it rarely happens when you're able to do it with the same team, especially when you're been given a role, getting many minutes, they were not restricting him in any way. They were pushing him up. They wanted him to be the guy. They put Tyler Hero, who was an all-star this season, and said, we're going to put him off the ball for Terry Rozier. So he can be a guy on the ball and can play his game and do all that stuff. So once you do that and make those moves, I just don't think there's bouncing back with that type of team, that organization. So if he's going to bounce back, it's going to be with another team.
I know what we're going to hear, and it hasn't come from the Heat account yet, but we're going to start to hear whispers in the offseason that Terry looks great. Be prepared, because this is what happens when guys have down years, especially if they're tradable commodities. Like, we're going to start to hear whispers. He looks great. He's getting his confidence back, which, will be attributed. He feels better physically than he did last season. This is all going to start to come out. Okay, whether or not it's going to be true or not, we won't know until we actually see him on the court. But that is certainly going to be a thing. No question about that, because that's what happens with these guys. And we've talked about Jaquez a little too. That's a little bit of a different situation because their financial commitment to Jaquez is not what it is to Rozier, even if Rozier becomes a little bit easier to trade now. Let me go through some of the numbers. And one of the reasons I'm distracted is I'm still racking my brain for that guy that bounced back with the Heat. And I again, doing this as long as I've been doing it, I was thinking back to the Zoe Timmy years. I mean, took some time. Mashburn took a little time to adjust. PJ Brown was consistent. Marley was consistent. You go past that, Brian Grant, Eddie Jones. I mean, they pretty much did the same thing the majority of the time that they were here. They were two of the anchors for that era. In the Wade era, even post championship, I'm having a hard time. I mean, if people want, so that's why it's like trying to find a precedent for this. Like where even like Spo could come in and say, okay, we did this with this guy and it worked. I don't even know what that would look like, honestly. Big Three era, there was nobody like that. That was the first thing that came to my mind. I was like, there's nobody who really played poorly. Rio had a year that wasn't great and he had a better year the next year. But other than that, I really, again, like I said, I'm struggling with it. And then the fourth year, a lot of those guys were just worn out, tired of Eric, tired of each other. And then they didn't really, none of them really got the opportunity the next year to do that. So
it's not the same. It's not the same as like guys that have like rough patches and bounce back either. Like what was it, Duncan? 2 years ago,
Okay, he would right. I'm glad you mentioned him. He's probably the closest, right?
He's
Like,
probably the
isn't
closest
he?
that I can think of right now, but I don't know if I would call it to. I mean, he had a rough patch. I mean, he was really unable to shoot the basketball, and it got to a point where he was kicked. He was out of the rotation. I mean, he got replaced out of the rotation by Max, and he was just not even getting any minutes. And he was able to bounce back, and you see what he's able to do. But I don't know if it's on the level of Terry because the expectations were different. I feel like at that point, and they actually had a decent replacement set up behind Duncan at that point. Where this was like they were just kept putting him out there. I don't know. I don't know if it's any different or if it's just a shooter having a rough patch or if it is pretty similar.
Well, looking at the Discord, I just checked it out. People aren't even coming up with Heat names. Like someone mentioned Markelle Fultz forgetting how to shoot. Like that's a confidence thing. If you want to say that this was all confidence and not injury, not off the court, not role, which, like you said, they put him in a role to maximize him, which is one of the reasons I have a hard time seeing what else they can really figure out here. Let me go through some of the numbers, and then on the other side, we'll talk about sort of how you approach training camp if he's still on the roster, depending on who else is here. But I'm looking at the overall numbers, and you would say, okay, career, he averages 14 points a game on 42, 36, 83 splits. Okay. This past year, he averaged under 11 points a game on 39, 29.5 and 85%. I just to give you some perspective on the 3-point shooting. We talked about him being a streaky 3-point shooter even when he got here, that he had a game where he made like 7, and then he had another game in Charlotte, 3 games in Charlotte where he was like 1 of 16, and then he'd have another game where he'd make 5. Like that's who he's been. But the numbers always settled in a certain place, and this year they didn't. And it kind of felt like Spo was waiting for that. Like, okay, at some point, like you're gonna get the snapback, and it never happened. Because I'm looking at the 3-point percentages. Let's just start. Forget the first year in Boston. He's a rookie, 21 years old. He played 39 games. But when he started playing consistently, okay, didn't start at all his second year in 16-17, but averaged 17 minutes a night. He was a rotation player. He shot 32% from 3. All right. But from there, when he started getting more playing time, and from there, he's never averaged fewer than 22 minutes in a season. Okay, 23 minutes. His 3-point percentages were 38, 35, 41, 39, 37, 33, 36, 36. Even with Miami in that short stretch, after they acquired him in 31 games, 37. So how does he end up at 29 last year? That's not who he's been.
I mean, it's crazy even looking at the bare numbers of the entire season, including Charlotte and Miami when he was here, averaged 20 points a game. And he dropped down to 10. So you're talking about like cutting his points per game in half. There's not really an explanation. Like like we said, like where Duncan, when I gave that example, it's like, okay, he just had a rough shooting from 3, but this wasn't one area of the basketball court where he saw a drop off. Like he just I think there was a portion of him losing his confidence. I think he lost his whole game was confidence. Like that's all Terry Rozier was his entire career, is the swagger, copying Dwayne, being that type of just lightning in a bottle scorer. And he just hasn't been that. And it cut off kind of every source. Like I said, he was an extremely bad finisher this past season. 3-point shots weren't falling. It got to a point, obviously, where I was mentioning last season, he was better off the dribble. Like, I mean, off the ball. He was better off the ball where he could kind of get into those spot up threes and stuff. But putting Terry Rozier consistently in a off the catch role is just not what anybody thought he would become. Like that's not what Terry Rozier was supposed to be. He seems like a guy, honestly, that has to be in a position where he's on a Charlotte type team. Because I'm looking at these shot attempts as well when he was with Charlotte.
Yeah.
He was just in a position where he was able to get a bunch of. He was averaging 18 shot attempts a game. Before he was traded to Miami when he was in Charlotte. Like that's a big difference maker to when he was here and he's averaging just under 10 with Miami this past season, which is still a lot considering the fact of the position he was in, but he just wasn't making them at a high rate at all. So I don't really know what the explanation is. And that's why this is interesting of what could happen next, because yes, maybe he gets his confidence back. Maybe he does get some of his shot making back. But like you said, it's very rare for that to happen with this organization. Yeah. When you get your confidence shot, like when this happens to this degree, when the fan base kind of it turns on you, when it realizes what's happening, there's just a realization there where you just need something new. Like we've said for Miami all this time, when the things got stagnant as a team, they need something new. They need new scenery. They need new players. It's the same thing as individual players go. Sometimes they need new scenery, and I just feel like the fit They took a swing, obviously, when they went to trade for him, thinking he'd be the extra scoring piece. It wasn't it, but it seems like it's really hit its end. It's hard to see recoveries spot.
Well, now it's gone toxic, right, with the fan base and all that. Now also Davion's moved ahead of him if they re-sign him to a contract, which isn't, by the way, Davion, even if he comes back, is not going to make more than half of what Terry already makes per year, which is just crazy when Davion's going to be clearly playing ahead of him if both of them are still here. One other thing I want to mention, and then the other side, we'll wrap this up and say kind of where this goes, but is that I talked to Rozier in training camp in the Bahamas, and he talked about how he thought he could be a high-level player until his late 30s. And he might be in China next year. Like, if this doesn't work out, like, I mean, you got to be honest. Like, I mean, I'm looking at the numbers here, and okay, he averaged 25.9 minutes last year, and I know Heat fans every night felt that was too much, right? You go back to the last time he averaged that exact minute total. He played 80 games in the 17-18 season for Boston, 16 of them off the bench. Last year, he played 23 off the bench. So fairly equivalent, okay? In that year, he shot 39.5%. This year, he shot 39.1%, although he shot much better from three that year, 38 versus 29. And he averaged 11.3 points in that case, 4.7 rebounds, 2.9 assists, only one turnover. Last year, he averaged 1.2, but turnovers don't really account for the decision-making problems he had. And in that year, he was 10th and 6th man of the year voting. And in this year, with roughly the same stats, he was unplayable. Okay. So, like, it feels like he's come all the way back around to where he was as a 23-year-old in Boston. And I don't really know where there is for him to go at this point, other than probably somewhere else, try to salvage it on one other team. And then that might be it. Anyway, do you want to tell you about a great sponsor of the 5 Reasons Sports Network? Our friend Lynette. You can find her at 954-581-8800, 954-581-8800. It's insurancebylynette.com. Life insurance, car insurance, homeowners insurance, based in Lauderhill, services the entire Tri-County area, and literally the biggest Heat fan that I know. Lynette's on all of our stuff. Okay, so check it out, insurancebylynette.com. It's going to come on here as a guest. Or 954-581-8800. That's 2 N's and 2 T's, insurancebylynette.com. All right, so like I said, there's going to be noise that he looks better. It's in the Heat's interest for that to get out. What is attractive to other teams potentially could be the clearing of the cap space at the end of the year. Of course, the Heat have that partial guarantee with Duncan after the season, which also makes him tradable. But there are teams that may be wanting to clear space for the 2026 class, depending on what that looks like. And Rozier may offer that. You're not getting an asset back for Terry Rozier at this point. This is the water. It's water under the bridge. So whatever. You don't throw good money after bad. Any expression you want to find. Okay, they're not getting anything close to what they gave up. They know that. All right, not getting a big expiring and a first-round pick or anything remotely equivalent. Okay, do you feel? And then we'll close it here. Do you feel that this is a player that the Heat just need to part with? Like, whatever, just move him to move him, or would you hold him maybe until the trade deadline, where again maybe some team needs space, maybe you can get some production out of him, rehabilitate him a little bit, even though everybody kind of knows what kind of player he is. Like, do you think this is problematic if he's in training camp and then the implication is that he's going to get some kind of a role this year? How would you handle that?
I don't think it's urgent. I don't feel like this is one of those cases where it's like let's say like Jimmy, where it was like hanging over the entire locker room or something, where it's like, okay, we need to get this done now because we're not going to be able to operate. Terry was a guy, he was not like, as much as you say like toxic, because it was like the toxicity from the fan base on him.
From the fans.
He was not problematic at all. Like
I'm glad you made that point. Because Terry didn't. My understanding was Terry created no problems. So I don't want to, in terms of role or anything like that. You saw him cheering on teammates. So I want to be clear, as the way he handled it as a human being, I don't think anybody had an issue with. It was just the declining play and Spo's unwillingness to let go of the rope there, because he thought that I guess something was going to turn around. And I do know that Spo and Pat were two that were real big advocates of that trade. So it kind of felt like Spo was sort of holding on to it. So you don't think I don't think it's toxic in that regard.
No.
The Heat aren't going to operate based on what the fans want them to do. So you just hold him until, ultimately he becomes another piece added to a trade, right? That's pretty much it?
Yeah, and I mean, it could get to a point. I mean, like, it's not like a case where like he's a salary filler and you probably have to throw in an extra asset to get off him. Like, it's not. I don't think it'll hit that range. I mean, we've seen we've seen worse salary fillers get thrown in and teams accept it when we go big trade gets through. But there's no like, this isn't one of those cases. Like let's be honest, the position the Heat are in right now, they're not in this position right now where they're moving into contender status as we speak, where they have to make this move to fix this. Like, no, they're in a retooling position, as Pat says. This could linger into the season. They could see what they have with him. I don't think it's, like you said, as we talked about in this episode, being honest, I don't think it's going to be rehabilitated with this team. I don't see him honestly getting a major role with this team. Like, craziest thing that could happen is if they do make a big trade, Duncan is the salary filler, and all of a sudden Terry Rozier is the backup point guard on this team. I mean, that would be the only weird scenario. Other than that, it doesn't feel like it's going to go that route. I feel like he's going to accept the role that he's put in. He's probably going to work hard in training camp, do all the stuff. Like we said, he was not problematic at all. And then you can see what they have at the trade deadline, see what you can move off them. And if that, these big names that open up, the big changes that we keep mentioning, some of these names, you're going to need a guy like Terry Rozier to throw in the mix. So it'll end up probably being helpful in the long run. So, I 100%, but it makes sense when you said before that it'll linger out there. Like Terry Rozier looks great. He looks healthy. He's playing, best basketball in a Miami uniform, all that stuff. But it makes sense. Like, there's no reason for us or the fans to shoot it down because that's the whole game here. That's what you always do when you try to, bump up, any player into trade talks or anything as an asset. Not saying he's going to be a giant asset, but you have to try to build it up. If they did what the fans do, they could just cut them. I mean, like, there's no point of even doing any of that. So it makes sense for them to go that route anyway. And we'll see what happens. But I don't think this is something where they have to move forward immediately.
And of course, what the fans don't understand, or some fans, I should say, a small segment of the fans, is that you can't just cut him. You'd have to buy him out. And I will say the Heat have a history of unloading much worse contracts than this. So if it's an unload, they could do that. I mean, just go back to the trade where they got Crowder and Iguodala. People forget in that trade they also were able to, and here's a couple of other players who never bounced back. Okay, so look at this. Winslow, fell off. And some of his injuries didn't bounce back, never bounced back. James Johnson and Dion Waiters were all unloaded in that one trade. And those were 3 deals, particularly Waiters and JJ, but also to his degree, Winslow, when he fell off. 3 players who fell off a cliff for one reason or another, particularly Waiters and Winslow, fell off a cliff for one reason or another. Didn't look like they were coming back, and the Heat were able to unload them. And they also have been able to unload Hassan Whiteside. They unloaded Brian Grant's contract at the end when Brian was not the same player that was part. So they've done this over and over. They're very good at that. Obviously, their entire team is. But sometimes they've had to, say, dump a Deadman or something like that and attach a pick. And I think that's what the frustration becomes. But then people forget they made a trade where they unloaded Whiteside, Waiters, and James Johnson, and they got 2 assets that helped them get to a finals. Okay, if you want to include Solomon Hill cheering, they got 3. So I would be patient with them on this. It was a mistake trade. They know it was a mistake trade. It's not a mistake you can repeat. And I'll just finish with this. Don't go get scorers from bad teams anymore. Do not. Charlotte, beware. Okay. Nobody has been traded from Charlotte recently has panned out anywhere else, right? Like, this is, and these sort of, these scorers, I know the expression is looter and a riot. His efficiency, Rozier's efficiency, made me believe that it could translate, but I would be, because it wasn't bad in Charlotte, but I would be very, very careful about getting those kind of players. If you're in a bad culture, bad system, and you score a lot, it doesn't mean you're going to contribute in the next place. I hope for Terry's sake, because like you said, he wasn't toxic as far as I know behind the scenes. He seemed outwardly to be, again, cheering on teammates. I didn't hear anything negative. I hope he rebounds for his own sake. But I think you're right. I think the most likely scenario is you kind of manage it, and then maybe you got occasional contributions. We hear those whispers that things look better, and then he's moved quietly in some trade before his contract expires. Brady, appreciate it. We'll have more episodes coming up. Again, our sponsor is insurancebylynette.com and PrizePicks. Use the code FIVE.